Welcome to the best of first-person episodes from Phantoms and Monsters. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of all future uploads.
Cryptid canine sightings recalled in rural northeastern Pennsylvania. I grew up an only child in rural northeastern Pennsylvania. I used to sneak out of my bedroom and go hang out in our backyard on summer nights when I had trouble sleeping or woke up in the middle of the night. This was around the age of 8 in the mid-90s. I'd go sit just below the top of the backyard hill, where I was out of sight of our kitchen window. There were trees to the left with a wild open field across the rest of a mile-wide valley. We had a large hill, with a bump in the middle, that was perfect for sledding in the winter. Below that was a field with a deer trail cutting through the bottom of the hill, and a creek beyond at the center of the valley. On a clear night with a bright moon, you could see across the valley to where my best friend's house had their floodlights on all night behind their house. It was about a mile distance. And when I say rural, I mean very rural Pennsylvania. Parent-teacher conferences were scheduled the first day of hunting season, and kids would often be out for a couple of days just for that. We had 2 houses in eye line of our house from that backyard. It was more than 30 miles to our nearest Walmart. I also grew up very familiar with deer, bear, rabbits, and even saw a mountain lion once while hiking with family. All of this to say, I am familiar with wildlife there. The first night I saw the Dogman was like any other. I was chilling in the grass, thrilled to just be doing something my parents didn't know about. I saw something moving quickly down along the deer trail. It was dark black against the rest of the night. Part way through its path from the woods beside my house, it noticed me and stopped. We just stared at each other for what felt like a long time. It stood up, and its ears were long enough to notice from a 100-yard or so distance. It was too thin to be a black bear, which I'd already seen a few times at that age. The staring continued for a long time. Eventually, it put its ears back down, put its front paws on the ground, and sprinted across the valley. I called it my werewolf because of the shape of it standing up. But after that first sighting, I went and sat outside a lot more. I remember once on a new moon I sat on the porch because I was too scared to go too far with how dark it was without the moon. I saw it 3 to 4 more times after that. It was usually running into the woods by my house, which were more than 10 full acres owned just for hunting season. My werewolf never bothered me after that, but I remember I was really disappointed when it got cold outside, and I'd have to stop going out at night because I wouldn't see it. TK.
Bizarre canine observed near Kerrville, Texas. Back in 2001, I was visiting my great-uncle in the region around Kerrville, Texas. At the time he was living in his first house in the area before he moved to a retirement community near a small set of trees. The trees were beautiful, really, as is the hill country. I was staying with him and my great-aunt for about a week when we went out for an evening to walk as dachshund as we tended to do in evenings. The walk was uneventful as the sun set, just a normal evening complete with the calls of doves and other wildlife, and the dog just having a wonderful time. Then, suddenly, all the wildlife went deafeningly silent, and both of us froze, as did the dog. I remember having a distinct sense of unease and fear that I could not quite explain, and the dog looking directly in a specific area near a streetlight, my eyes turning to where the dog was looking. There was a creature loping through there, a dog-like thing about the size of a large Labrador retriever, save that on the creature's neck, there was a head the size of a bear. The thing was loping up and down in a way that fitted that kind of build. It looked hypnotic in a sense, and I was more terrified than I have ever been with anything else I ever saw. It gave me a visceral understanding of Lovecraft's idea that things that just look fundamentally wrong are terrifying, precisely because the proportions do not fit. That thing was powerfully built. The upper limbs in particular were very stout, and the dog remained frozen for another few minutes before we moved back to the house. I'm not sure what precisely that was, or if it was a Dogman, but it convinced me that something like that could exist. The sudden silence that lasted for a few minutes after it left, and the dog just being frozen without even growling or barking, still sends chills in me when I remember it. As my only encounter was something like a cryptid, too, it remains something very vivid in my mind, not least because I know how dogs move. I know what wolves would move like, and whatever that was, it was no natural thing that made sense. D.
They do exist. 29 months ago, I did not believe in Bigfoot, despite having owned hunting property in Perry County, Ohio, alleged home of a giant Sasquatch known as the Grassman, and despite living for over 3 decades in Bigfoot Central in the Pacific Northwest, not 60 miles from the site of the Patterson-Gimlin film. 28 months ago, however, I saw my first Bigfoot. I've now seen them on 6 occasions. There is no question but that they do exist. Scoff all you want, your doubts do not affect my experiential reality. But here's the thing, 48 years ago, 1971, in central Michigan, I had a rather scary, if inconclusive experience with what I suspect was, what was then called, the Michigan Monster, an animal now more commonly known as the Dogman. I've now come across several individuals locally, whose experiences I have every reason to credit, who claim to have run across just such a creature out here, one of whom saw it at very close range for several minutes, plenty of time to get a good look at it. Much as I do not want to believe in any such thing, given the shock to my skepticism which Bigfoot wrought, I don't feel like I can blithely deny that there may be other things out there. There are certainly enough tales out here about them, independent of the witnesses whom I personally know, to raise the real possibility that there are some such creatures in these woods. The featured story reeks of truthfulness to me. This is almost exactly what one might well expect. Nothing about it is inconsistent with what we know or inconsistent with potential reality. There's no evidence of hyper BS in the tale. So, whether or not I wish to believe in these things, I have determined to behave in a fashion consistent with the possibility that these things are out there. I never go out unarmed or alone. It may all be a case of mistaken identity or self-inflicted fright, but if it is real, well, I do not wish to be at its mercy. Not gonna happen. Wouldn't be prudent.
Wolfman attacks in Indianapolis. I wish to keep my name to myself, but I am willing to provide my account of what happened. This is a first-hand account of an encounter that I had with a creature of unknown origin. It was about 5 years ago, late at night. I went for a walk in the dark to clear my head one night when I got the feeling that I was being followed. Before I could say anything, a dark fur-covered creature lunged out of the nearby bushes. It looked like a large man crossed with a wolf. It had deep green eyes and an elongated snout. The thing smelled like a rotting deer carcass, and it was very heavy. It slammed into me, knocking me to the ground where it stood over me and growled as it looked me in the face. I kicked it and it yelped before swiping at me, cutting my arm with its sharp claws. I was sure it was going to kill me, but then a noise similar to a car with a broken muffler backfiring scared it, and the creature ran away. Strangely, my arm no longer felt like it was bleeding, and the cut wasn't hurting anymore. My shirt sleeve was torn, but when I wiped away the wet blood from my arm, there wasn't even a scratch left behind. I was sure that it was just a bad dream, and so I headed back home. I never reported this because I was certain that nobody would believe me, and because it has been haunting me every day since. I haven't seen this creature since it ran off into the woods when that sound scared it off, but I sometimes worry that it might come back. I also don't know why the scratch on my arm was gone moments after the thing ran off. Everything I've found about it online has said that it was a werewolf, but I don't think those are real. It also isn't like the Dogman or any other similar kinds of creature. If you have heard of anything else like this, I would be interested to hear about it. Thank you.
Upright hyena encounter. My friends and I went to Mexico for a holiday. We rented out a bungalow with some woods and stuff at the back. They went out to get more beer and just some shopping, and I was left behind to have a shower. After yelling that they were gonna double lock the door, they leave. The shop was about a 15-minute walk away, and I was literally just going to wash my hair, make a tea and watch some TV until they get back. About 5 minutes went by and I heard a knock on the front door. Weird as my friends have keys to this apartment. I just guessed that they were too lazy to use the keys and forgot something. I literally got out of the shower with bubbles in my hair and was walking towards the door with a towel just wrapped around me. The door had a panel of textured glass in the middle, and I could see this massive entity standing there. My friends and I are quite small and the guys have blonde hair. This thing looked big and black and was very tall. Whatever it was, it's tapping on the door, and I'm standing in the entrance to the kitchen just peeking round the corner. I don't want it to see me and I slowly crouch down and crawl to the sofa. It's still tapping. After what seemed like ages, it just walks off, and the textured glass is just back to normal, with nothing the other side. My friends come back and Jake just quickly opened the door and goes, "Oh my God, Amanda." We were walking back and we turned the road where the room is right. And we see this massive thing. It looked like a hyena, that's all I can describe it as, but only it was walking on two legs. Phew, at least someone else saw it. He's still going on, yeah, and as we saw it, it started making a weird yelling, growling noise. I swear to you, Amanda, it walked off on those two legs and into the forest.
This is Lon Strickler. If you like this program, it would help us if you would give it a thumbs up. Then subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notification when we upload new first-person encounters. We have many more to come very soon. And by the way, if you have a suggestion or an experience of your own, please leave a comment.